they better come and run it down, because Chris Froome is taking the victory and the maillot jaune. Chris Froome applauding the man who's beaten him on the same team, Geraint Thomas of Wales. And this is his 6th historical stage win since he won in 2012 on La Planche des Belles Filles. Froome is on top.
Should there be a salary cap in cycling? We are here to settle that today in The Saddle. Steve Schlanger with Christian Vande. This is a topic that's dividing people more and more these days, because if you think about it, Team Sky has won the biggest race in the world, the Tour de France, every year except one, going back to 2012. And a big reason why is because they have the biggest budget, and a lot of people are getting sick of that. They want to see the funds get dispersed between the other teams in the peloton. So, Christian Vande, a salary cap could solve that. Are you in favor of a salary cap in cycling?
Well, first of all, we're going to have to define the salary cap, and that goes into the weeds pretty hard. I mean, if we're going to do it like the Yankees, or we're going to say like we're the Major League Baseball, for example, where people get taxed for having too much money and that gets divvied up, or how does that work, Steve? I mean,
well, there's a luxury tax in baseball, for instance, where if a team spends beyond a certain threshold, then they get taxed and they have to pay because of that. In other sports, there's a hard cap. But I think the key is that a lot of the major sports have some kind of cost control. Baseball, football, basketball. There's a way to keep those salaries down. Cycling doesn't have anything like that.
I get that. And, you know, coming from usually most of my career was always on a team that did not have even close to having the highest salaries, or that being the budget. So usually I would say yes, but now being on the other side of the fence and realizing how hard it is to get dollars into the sport, let alone a team, I really have a hard time putting a cap on any kind of dollar that you put into it, and especially given the way that cycling is set up, that there is no revenue coming from TV. There's no revenue coming from the gate. There's really not much revenue coming from jersey sales. So it's all just from private money coming into, or sometimes from a government money, if you're Astana or if you're Bahrain, things like that. But really the way the money comes in is so hard that I'm going to have to say, as we sit here today, that no, there should not be salary caps.
Well, I'm going to push back on that and say there should, and the reason being because of something you just mentioned, that it's hard to bring money into the sport. But if we continue to go down this path that we're going down right now, with Team Sky winning the Tour de France every year, and it seems like there's not even an opening for another team, you're going to lose fans and you're going to lose sponsors, because they're going to say, hey, why are we wasting our money on these other teams that never have a chance?
Yeah. No, I get that. I get the argument. I could jump on another ship like really quickly and argue the same side as yourself. But really, I'd rather see more money come into sport and everyone trying to push up from the bottom up than pushing from the top down and levying the top teams, being what it was BMC before and Team Sky. But I think that Team Sky's differentiator is that they have so much of a past, starting in 1996 with the lottery system, Dave Brailsford starting off with a track program and really starting what they do and what they are now in 2019 as being Team Sky now. I get it, but no, I can't say that we should ever stop bringing money in. I'd rather have the teams from the bottom up get bigger and bigger.
Well, I mean, other teams in other sports have always faced that same dilemma, and they have said, you know what, for the good of the sport, and sometimes it's kind of been forced upon them, but for the good of the sport, we will give in to this and will become a part of this process and the entire structure of cost control, so that in the end we all make more money.
No, I get it, but that's not the way cycling is right now, and I would love cycling to become more of a league sport. I mean, take the models from American, whether it be the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. I would love that, but it's just not realistic at this point in time. You got teams coming from all over the world. There's really, again, the biggest thing is there's no revenue structure to support these teams. So we have to really think about all the private money that comes into the sport and really just be happy every time that we do have a big sponsor like Sky coming in and like Murdoch writing a big check.
So, all right, given that line of thinking, if you want to continue to increase the revenues, if we're going to keep going down this particular road, how are you going to keep interest? Because you know what you're basically doing is you're not changing the structure, and if you're churning out the same product year after year and it's not getting better, it's not getting different, more people don't have a chance. At some point, basically, does the well dry up?
The thing is that cycling, just like what's going on right now with Team Sky, which I just stated, is that organically it's changing hands. Team Sky's leaving the sport. We don't know what's going to be like in 2020 right now. So we don't know what their budget's going to be like. So organically, they're already gone. There's usually a lifespan of a big sponsor like that coming in, bring back Mape in the past, big sponsor in the past. But even people think that U.S. Postal was massive. It was never a big, real money sponsor. Telecom was a better example of that. So if we think about this, Sky's already gone. So organically, they're already going to be changing hands in 2020. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to think about somebody else. So I don't know if that's the right thing. I think it organically just leaves the house.
Okay, look at another sport like the Patriots in football.
You can't compare it even close.
Why not? Why not?
Because Patriots...
It's cost control. Well, my point is that...
Okay, that's cost control, and they still kill everybody.
Because they act smarter, okay?
Well, they can say the same thing for Sky.
They're strategic, all right?
Well,
they
so
just spend more. They just keep... They write checks. They write checks.
That's not true.
This would force directors and teams to be more strategic, to spend a little differently, and that could create more interest, more dollars, because you're spreading out the talent...
Look, don't go all Moneyball on me. Like I get what you're saying, and I think that Sky is doing both, and that makes it a lot easier for them to do well. So they have the money and they have the expertise, and they spend a lot of it on their R&D. They do it a lot of it, all the research and development, testing, going whether it be the altitude camps or testing on the wind tunnel, fabrics that they're wearing. They do a lot of that, and not all the time they're the highest paid riders, but you're getting so much more if you're going to Team Sky because you know that comes with it.
Chris Froome himself said, and this is a guy who has benefited from the Team Sky system as much as anyone, multiple-time winner of the Tour de France. When asked about the salary cap, he said that, you know what, I like the way things are now, but if I was on another team, it would be a different story.
Yeah.
So the riders get it. They know.
Look, I'm doing this for the sake of this argument right here. Like I said, I spent 12, 15 years on the other side of the fence, and I would have loved to have a salary cap because it would have just helped us. But right now, as I see it on the other side, I think it's so hard to get that money coming in. And next year, or even in 6 months from now, we could have a completely different conversation because Team Sky might not be what it is as we sit here today.
Well, I mean, the problem I have, all right, and this is really where I come down, is the fact that it's okay to have, I think, a dominant team every once in a while, but the way the economic structure is right now, the haves and the have-nots are just growing further apart. And every year, the gap is getting wider. Now, if it was a more manageable gap, that would be one thing. But if this is the way it's going to keep going, that's an unsustainable road
I get
to go
it.
down.
But we're talking mostly about the Tour de France, though.
Right.
And if we look at the whole year, I mean, right now Astana's on a tear. Astana's not even in the conversation. They're crushing everyone. So, I mean, what are they doing? I mean, how is this all going on? I mean, so we could look. There's a lot of minutia going on. And again, my biggest statement I'm going to say is that when Sky comes out of the picture this year, are we going to have this conversation next year?
When you consider the sport at large, the Tour de France is the race that people care
about.
That's the race that people care about. I mean, you know, we love the sport and we watch it year round, but you know, people aren't getting invested in the Tour de San Juan. They're not watching what's happening in Argentina in January.
No.
So, I mean, the Tour de France really sets the market, and in that case, it has been, and for the foreseeable future, will be about a power team, a super team like Sky.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, you know, it's worked in these other sports, all right? They were headed down the same path, and they needed to have some kind of cost control. They needed to spread the talent. They did, and they're thriving. And I think for cycling to keep pace and also thrive in the future, they've got to do something to get the costs under control. Yeah, you agree. I'll take that silence as an admission of your...
No, I 100%, like I said before, I see both sides of this. 100% see both sides of this. But right now, I really love to see every dollar that comes into cycling. I love it to stay in there as long as possible. I understand it's really hard, but there's no way that if you're writing a check, you're going to be okay with paying a tax and giving it to another team, especially when it's private money that has to go through a board that stockholders are paying for. There's no way.
So your final answer, if you had to make the decision one way or the other.
We're sitting in the Comcast building right now. You think these guys are going to be okay with that? No way.
So your decision? I want you to say it out loud.
No salary cap in cycling right now. No.
All right. I say there's got to be some kind of a salary cap. So we will leave it at that. If you want to be on the right side of history and join me in the lane that says yes to a salary cap, you can comment below. Make sure you fill it in and ignore this guy.